Hey there, everyone. It's Vic, and welcome back to another session of Humanalytics here, like where we all talk all things data, tech, and science, especially in those areas that matter to us most around work, HR, and the science of how we live our lives here. I'm super excited to have our guest here on the show. As somebody that I've gotten to know pretty well over the last few weeks and months here. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share and bring to the stage Vahan. Vahan, how are you?
Great to be with you today.
Sure. So we're gonna dive right in. There's some cool things that you'll learn about the company that Vahan and his founders have built. But there's also some cool things about Vahan that I think are really cool to share, especially if you're in this area of recruiting, HR, and with such a big focus on DE&I think this conversation behind is very timely. So how about we, do this? How about we start by sharing with people, who you are, like your background, and kind of, how you came here, or the things that led you here today, like for lack of a better term.
Right. I'm Vahan. I am the co-founder and CEO at Cauldron, as you mentioned. I'm 5 years into the HR tech space. Built several products for companies that are hiring applicants applying to jobs and colleges. Like pretty experienced there. This is our second company that is in the same space and is basically powered by our learnings throughout like building products and testing it
Mm.
in the space.
Very cool. And we'll get to the application soon here because I think it's actually mind blowing and it's really cool. But as somebody who has a good kind of grasp on the HR tech market, what are some issues that people should talk more about regarding the HR tech market, right? Like what are those trends and things that either people are talking a lot more about now or people aren't talking about and they should be talking more about?
Right. So that's a good question, actually. I've discussed it with a lot of our advisors and friends too, and I think the consensus is that HR and talent and people, like
Mm,
these roles in organizations, they're in this peculiar area where um, you usually have like for some roles or for some departments, you usually have like, okay, in 10 years it's supposed to be like it's supposed to change in some way or format, and maybe in
mm,
5 years there's this changes, 10 years these changes, and then it's gradually evolving. Like for HR, that like a 10-year change and evolution happened in a span of 2 years.
mm,
So a
yeah.
lot of what we were thinking about that's going to happen further down in 2020s or 2030s are now happening today to the workplace,
Mm.
right? Because what happened in the last 2 years because of the pandemic. So I like the consensus we came for, and the answer to this question is really everything is changing.
Hmm.
Everything that matters to the HR department, how you even call it by name today, is changing. Every function of it is now going to be different and is going to need a different set of solutions or a different set of technology that's going to power it up.
So I think that's actually really cool and really important. In the same way that marketing, I make this analogy a lot of times, has gone through their transformation where it was more of a creative element, and for a large part it still is. But because of the access to data that they had with online marketing, there's a really data-driven approach to the creative element. I think that, as you hinted, in the last 2 years, that's what's been the case with HR, where there's been a need like for data that's now driving the creative elements of it. Is that an analogy that you feel like gels here too?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I compare talent recruiting to marketing all the time,
Okay.
just because how online it is right now, and how much hiring is now affected by the same basic laws of humans that e-commerce marketing is affected, and like all the laws are the same. So there's a lot of things that overlap in both disciplines. I think for HR, like data is obviously something that's very important to solve a lot of the issues that are coming up. But besides that, there's also this layer of the whole experience, or the whole just general work has
Yeah,
changed
yes.
of the HR person. The HR person has changed. The way you call them has changed. Their power or their importance in the company has changed tremendously.
Mm,
So I think there's a much bigger change than just like a upgrade of technology here.
mm,
There's a whole experiential change where every kind of um, day, every single stage of the work that the town department does, the people department does, is has now like has now changed how it works. I mean, the simple way of how you join the job every day is
mm.
now changing. Like, you have
That's
all these crazy VR technologies coming up. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think you made a great point that even if you look at the roles that are in HR teams now, a lot of like the roles that you're seeing out there are like people analytics partners or chief diversity officers at the C-level suite, right? These were things that you saw in pockets, but
yep.
now becoming really, really a mainstream. So I think that's a good clue here into how things are changing. So I think actually it's a perfect segue to talking about how things are changing. So really talking about a cauldron. But before we do, I have a quote from you that I think is just super, super cool. I want to share. And then I want you to kind of share a bit kind of a bit more behind like the quote, and then I'll see if that leads into talking about a cauldron. But I like this quote, and I'm going to share it with folks. I think it's really cool. It says, "My current passion is redefining the job application. All of recruiting's issues lie at the top of the funnel. By solving the job application problem, you take care of time loss on screening, on interviews, the bias in recruiting, and maintaining a diverse pipeline." Right. So I think what's really cool is that this is a passion for you, and that plays out in Cauldron. So I think this is the perfect setup, Vahan. It's telling us a bit more about Cauldron, what it is, and so that for folks that don't know, like they can have a bit more context here.
Right. Right. So yeah, so I think I was pretty fired up when I wrote that, but and obviously I'm very biased because that's the problem that it just happens that our company is focused on solving that issue for the
Just so
world,
happens, right? Yeah.
but it just so happens. But I think like a big insight into this, and as we start talking about Cauldron, is that a big kind of motivation for us to start this company was when we were researching into the problem, and we were starting to understand how just broken and toxic the whole applying to jobs process is for
Right.
applicants and people in general.
Mhm.
And it all culminated in this point where we were guests at a bootcamp open house, and like a bootcamp is supposed to be the place where talent is trained, right? You would usually, and companies even today, like you look at a boot camp as more or less of a qualified talent pool there.
Right. And this
And
is like a tech boot camp, right? I think the
yes,
training
so
people skills.
this was
Okay.
a tech
Right.
boot camp. Yeah, it was a tech boot camp, basically training engineers, right? And engineering again, most everyone needs engineers. So we went there, and uh, alumni came in to like share their experience with the class, the new class, and they said this thing, right? So they said, start looking for your jobs now, start applying now, because by the time you graduate, which is going to be 8 to 7 months, then like you're gonna need that time. You're gonna need that much time to land a job.
Wow.
And just
Wow.
7 8 months on just applying to jobs, and what you do is you just spam your resume here and there. It felt very painful, and we just saw the faces of this new class, and we were
Mm,
mesmerized. So yeah,
mm,
that was the situation, and that was kind of the culmination of, okay, like our company can solve this issue now.
mm. So how did you go from, hey, this is really painful for these folks to Cauldron, and what features and, unique capabilities does Cauldron have?
Right. So we looked at this way, right? So um, we saw an applicant problem, but before that, like in our years of experience, we've seen the other side of this issue. Like with companies that we personally worked with, they
Mm-hmm.
would always complain to us that, hey, we're getting applicants, like we're getting 300 people apply to our job, and we need to spend 5 weeks to filter them out and decide on our final interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And even when we do spend that much amount of time, uh, only 1 out of 10 interviews we have are worth our hiring manager's time. They're always kind of the hiring managers were very ruthless. They complained very much about the lack of qualified interviews they were having, and the amount of the interviews that they were having to do every week.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that much wasted time, then that's something that should be looked at. So we were already looking at a solution of, okay, how can we make it so the funnel gets smaller, like the applicant funnel gets smaller, but you don't sacrifice the applicant experience, and that was very important to us.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, you are able to keep the funnel healthy.
Yeah.
So by looking at that, we tried out different solutions. We tried out different ideas, and one that stuck was kind of the meritocracy way of doing things, which meant, hey, this is the job, like this is the job description. That part is standard. You
Mm-hmm.
can look at it. But if you want to be an applicant for us, we're going to need you to go through these like few checklist items of tasks or questions that interest us, specifically designed for this role and specifically designed for you as our applicant in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So this does a few things, right? So first of all, um, you're giving your applicant an experience bigger than send us your resume and we might or might not come back to you at like undefined amount of time,
Yeah.
which is like one of the biggest problems today. Everyone is talking about resume black holes
Yeah.
and bad applicant experience.
Mm-hmm.
um, the second thing that does that, like shift of process does is it makes it very easy to spot signal from really good applicants, because you're going to look at their work, look at their skills, and you're going to understand that, hey, these people know what they're talking about. And it makes it really easy to also see the noise in it, because if you're giving someone a question, and you can easily understand if they're good or not, and in the way that resumes would often mask that noise, right?
Right. Right.
And the third thing we understood later on, where our early customers gave us feedback, was this is the best way for you to practically eliminate any kind of chance of bias in this like pre-screening stage up until your final interview,
Yeah.
just because you're you can skip the resume, or you can hide the resume, and you can have your hiring managers or have your recruiters only look at the skill-based data. You can only look at task responses, and you can only grade or score those task responses, and you don't have to check the person's background, and you don't have to look into what they've done or who they are or where they come from. You can
Right.
only score their skills.
Right.
So this becomes a whole like skills-based, merit-based approach to recruiting that is the whole core of this business.
And Vahan, I think that's what really excited me. The first time that we talked about Cauldron, I said, "Wow, this is amazing!" Right? One, on one side, I've seen and I've been on that side where like you post a job for software like engineer, and you literally like get 1,000 applications, and some poor recruiter has to figure out, how do I narrow down like the funnel,
Yep.
and inevitably they can't look through all those applications. So there are probably hidden gems and folks who are missed just because of the volume, right? Completely agree. But I think
Yep.
the part that got me super jazzed was, we've been trying to figure out, how do we account for our own unknown biases,
Yep.
right? That we have. And I think, if the core of what you're looking for is a person's skills, the person's knowledge, the person's capability, putting that at the forefront of the funnel, and then coming to it where you've already down to select it is a really, really unique way to the problem. You're almost flipping it up on its head almost. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and one thing to to your point of the poor recruiter having to do all of this, like our main user, the person who uses the product, is the recruiter.
He's a recruiter,
So the
okay?
feedback, yeah. So the feedback we get from them, and they're in charge of setting up this everything. The feedback we get from them, and the feedback we get when talking to recruiters and trying to sell them in Quadrant, and what we found out is that the recruiter position in the company is usually like the universal punching bag, because
Unfortunately, yes.
on one end you have applicants and candidates to take care of that you can't because you're overloaded. You have probably the worst kind of heuristic to evaluate talent, which is your resume to work with. So you have the most terrible tool set, and you have your hiring manager, your team, whose only kind of blame target to this whole situation that they have, which is like time wasted, is you, because you're the person that's connecting the talent to them, and the higher up. So it always comes back to the recruiter. And I mean, for the last 2 years, they have this new kind of we as recruiters, like, we have this new blame target, which is the world. The world has changed. Like, no one knows what they're doing, but still, we find that recruiters get like their fair share of blame, which they shouldn't, because they're just very under teched, underpowered versus what they're dealing with.
Yeah, and a thumbs up in any chat there for all of our like recruiters out there. But the job is not easy, but it is so critical, especially when companies like are growing. And like you said, I think I've seen where recruiting could be the punching bag, but if you look at the metrics, they a lot of times have to measure, right? These job like descriptions that they receive, and then something completely that a different, each and every applicant has a different resume, a different format, right? They have to now synthesize those two, combine with the knowledge, while still trying to be, where their diversity hat on. It's a lot. So this is a really great place where I think the technology can enable a lot of things like to happen. So beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'm actually, curious, and you've kind of talked about this like a little bit, but what has been the most fascinating or surprising discovery that you've had while building this, right? Like, I know you've talked about the, like the portion around, DE&I that, kind of helps that a bias area. So is there any other area, or is it this and there's more? Would love to hear any discoveries you've had from talking with customers about this platform and technology.
Right. That's a good question. I think, yeah. So I think one thing we discovered very early on, but it was like shocking and kind of game changing for us, was how much the experience that you put candidates through, applicants through, matters when building this kind of product.
Okay.
Because you are doing something different here. You are doing something different here, and you're doing something that's not really that's been frowned upon for years and years, which is you're making it harder for applicants to apply. Like, essentially, you're doing that. You're adding friction in the application process, which for the last 5-10 years, I don't know, any HR tech that would come out there would say, hey, this is like we're doing seamless application.
Frictionless.
Click a button and your resume. Yeah. Frictionless, right? That's the word. And then you have these giants like Indeed and LinkedIn adding this one-click apply options, which seems to be in heavy use. But what we're doing here is like completely changing the game. Here is we're saying, okay, you should add friction in the application process, and marketers know that you should add friction in the buying process because you need to disqualify your bad leads, right? So it's the same kind of concept here, but for recruiting and for HR, this is very kind of different. And we found out very early on that if that friction is done badly, incorrectly, and your applicants don't feel good every single second that they're applying to you, you're going to lose them, and this product is going to is not going to work as much as you want. You're going to disqualify good applicants. So we've designed this product to do just that, like give really good applicant experience. And a lot of the feedback that we get from applicants, which is something we track religiously, is this was fun. This wasn't too hard.
Yeah.
And this made me realize how qualified I am for this job, that I should push on and I should actually apply to this job. And I felt like my application was worth more because it wasn't just a resume, and people actually got back to me, and I was evaluated. I feel like I was evaluated fairly. So that feedback means like a ton to us, because that basically means we succeeded in the first discovery that we made here.
That's cool, because I think to some people, exactly what you said, when they hear, hey, you're adding something to the top of my funnel, now I won't even get candidates, because they'll just leave. I have a hard time with asking them to complete our ATS form. Now they have to do this other thing before they get there. So I think it is telling, and probably eases like the minds of some. You say, hey, I may this may reduce like my overall funnel. I think that if the experience is built so that there's an exchange of value, right? They're doing some work, you add, removes some barriers, but in the process, they know that, that their feedback will be like received, and, there's this exchange here. I think that's what makes the difference. And that's why people complain about this black hole, right? Of like, I have to upload like my resume and then enter everything in like my resume into your applicant tracking system, where I may not hear anything back at all, right? So I think that's really, really great feedback. That's cool. That's cool. So what, I guess kind of shifting to, more broader trends now, kind of as you're thinking, like about a Cauldron, and thinking about the broader HR market, what do you believe are the most important trends right now, right? Just in a broader HR. And we talked about, something at the beginning, but just curious from your perspective as you're looking across like the market, is there a topic, a trend, or, a push that you're seeing more and more in companies that are lean into or ask more about?
So I think I'll answer this question in like two-way format. So one, in just broad HR, I'm really interested in what work looks like after we're done with all of these changes, because there's so much going on there. Which, like, one is remote, like everyone can work from everywhere. Two is, where do I work? What are the softwares? It's no longer just Slack. It's a whole tech stack of things that I need to log in every day. And it's also even things like, okay, are we actually going down to a 4-day work week? Are we cutting hours? Are we doing more? Are we feeling more productive with just less hours in the week? And what kind of work is being done that's like more productive in a remote kind of setting? Maybe it turns out that product building is very, very much more productive than in this remote setting than it was in the office or some other type of job, right? And I'm interested to see what kind of jobs come out as the new kind of freelance thing, right? How like you've had like freelance designers, freelance recruiters for a while now, but what other jobs can be freelanced given this new way that companies run things? Yeah, so now that I can do my job from I don't know, Brazil or wherever in the world, or then maybe I choose to live my life differently, and that affects how I work. And yeah, so that's something that I'm really interested in, to look where that goes. Specifically in recruiting, I'm very much interested in the trend of where we will end up with this hiring fairly train, because I mean, this is a topic that's been talked about a lot. I think the only projects or the only kind of notable advancement we've seen in the last 2 years. I think before that, it's a lot of that was just marketing speak. But now I see interesting projects. I think, but there's also a lot of noise still there.
Lots of
So it's
Yep.
interesting. It's super interesting to me where if like the good kind, if we will find the right way of hiring and making it actually fair,
Mm,
and filling our funnels with and like making our funnels inclusive and
mm.
filling our funnels with diverse talent, or will we just go back to kind of marketing speak and using products for the words they use in their kind of messaging? Yeah, those I'd say those are the two trends that I'm really looking forward to see where they end up
Yeah,
and
no, same.
how the dust settles.
Likewise, likewise, especially with that hiring fairly piece, which again, I think we're hearing a lot of talking points, like about it, but we're not seeing any outcomes that, or as many outcomes as there are talking points. Let's put it that way, right? So I too am very interested on kind of where that lands and what that looks like. Well. So it's been great. This has been awesome. Let's for those who want to talk more, where can people find you? Like to learn more, or partner up here, man.
Yeah, so find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm active on both, and I do reply to all DMs. So we'll do that. I'm happy to chat with anyone who has an interesting question or idea. Um, yeah, and you can obviously visit cauldron.app and check out our tool, our website. And yeah, there's a freemium offer there right now, so you can just sign up for free and play around it. And definitely tell me how it goes, and do report if you find any bugs there. But
Of course, we're very cool. I encourage again, if you're a recruiter, if you're a leader of HR who is trying to solve this, well, he's trying to solve any of like the problems of we're not getting the best talent in front of our hiring managers, even though our pipeline of candidates is large, or we need to find an actual or better solution into fair hiring practices. I think this is one of the most creative and practical solutions I've seen brought forth here. So thanks for you, Vahan, and your team there at Cauldron for all of that, like you do. Before I let you go, I always love like to ask this a question around what's the best piece of career advice you've ever gotten, received, read, heard, for those folks there who are looking to grow.
um, that's interesting. I think there's one thought that I didn't necessarily get this advice before I kind of was figuring out myself, but I think the biggest learning that I've had was you can learn anything online.
Mm,
And I think a lot of the time, a lot of young people I meet and a lot of people I met are criminally underestimate the power that they have on their Google Chrome
yeah,
and what they can do with it.
yeah.
And this is coming from someone who learned pretty much everything that I do today
Mm,
from just learning it myself and studying. I definitely can say nothing I learned in college has helped me run this company day to day, or nothing I learned at work that's
mm.
helping me do this right now. So
No, that's great. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that we have the world's knowledge at our fingertips, which is amazing, right? And prior to that, there was the library where you can learn anything and everything, but we now have the knowledge of like the world at our fingertips. So, as a challenge to everyone out there,
yep.
don't be afraid to put yourself out there, learn, take a program, take a course, all those cool things that you feel like others know, you can know too. So very cool piece of advice behind. Thank you so much for being here and joining us here at Humanalytics.
Thank you so much, Vic, for
All
having
right,
me.
cool. All right, everyone. Until like the next time, thank you all so much and enjoy.